What's up, and welcome back to the Talking Nutrition podcast. How are you, Christine?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Yeah, me too. It's been a lot of training, like we were just talking about before we hit record.
Mhm. Mhm.
A lot of lifting, long sessions. I got a walking pad. You
Oh
definitely
yeah.
inspire me on. You definitely influenced me on that one. No, I had to get one. Um,
Yeah.
as I just told you, like as I started coaching with someone again with Cody, and he's like, "Okay, let's start with 10K steps." I was like, "Well, fuck,
Yeah.
that's that's a lot for me currently."
And
Um,
he's gonna push those because he pushed me
oh
to
yeah,
13,000.
yeah. But I will say with the walking pad, it's easy. Like yesterday, like I
Yes.
accidentally hit 15, so I'm like, okay, we're good now. you know?
hmm Especially for like working and walking. It's so
Yeah,
great.
it's great.
hmm
How's your training anyway? Your own training.
Um, Honestly, I have no like structured anything with my training right now. Um, I really am just waking up and deciding what I want to do that day based off of how I feel. And I know that's not the best way to train by any means, but it is what it is right now. And I'm enjoying that freedom. I'm just really enjoying it. There'll be times where I will get back into like a structured program and I'll work with someone like Cody or whoever, or like Paragon or something like that. But right now it's fun just doing what I'm doing, and I'm staying, like where I want to be with body composition and everything. And so I'm in a good spot.
Nice. I feel like
Mhm.
that's kind of been my year as well. I just did a DEXA scan 2 days ago, and I was like, okay, let's see, right? So I expected to like see a very low, like a relatively low number in terms of muscle mass and stuff, because I just like train maybe on average like 3 times a week this whole year
Mhm.
until like two
Yep.
weeks ago. So
Mhm.
I was like, not gonna expect too much, but I just want to see where I'm at, and stayed lean, got muscle really well. Like
Yeah.
I just maintained, and I'm just good, and that's with pretty like minimal training. Like
Mhm.
now I'm ramping it up again, but it's kind of nice. And
Yeah.
what you're doing like this time of the year, like it's kind of great anyway, right? Like it's a little
Mhm.
more chill,
Yeah.
like.
It's nice. Mhm.
And I think too, we talked about this before, but like you have the experience too to be able to do that because you've done so
Yes.
much, you kind of know, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so it makes it easier. Cool. Any updates on your end otherwise?
I got Invisalign, and so I'm talking with like a lisp now a little bit, if you haven't noticed. Do you know what
Hmm.
Invisalign is?
Now that you mention it, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I started it last week, and it's definitely like affecting my speech a little bit. So just a heads up on that. Um, what else? Our Black Friday deals were a big success. That was a really awesome thing. Within even our own clients, like we had clients extend their contracts 12 months, 6 months. And so that was a really great thing. I think that's it.
Cool. Great. That's
hmm
awesome.
hmm
I think it's
Yep.
good, like just for anyone listening, right? Whether you end up working with us or other coaches, like commit to like a long-term thing, right? I think that's
Yeah.
super important. I just committed to 12 months of training and nutrition with Cody. And it's like, that's a long
hmm
time. And also for me, I was like, as it is a long, a while, like next year by
Yeah.
December, like we're still going to be training
Totally.
and coaching.
hmm
But then again, like if you really want to change your life, like that's what it takes, you know? And
100%.
if you really have been struggling,
hmm
like that's what it takes. So commit to that stuff. Don't expect even like 3 months or six, right? Six is pretty
Right.
decent.
Yeah.
But if you're in it for the
Yeah.
long game, like you'll get the real results. No, that's great.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, for me, update wise, I mean, mostly just training. Steps are way up. And we're actually announcing our second coach next week. which is super cool.
Ooh, I'm excited for that.
So I'm excited.
Nice.
So that's going to be great. And yeah, that is it for now. I'll be sharing more about that like next week, but that's it for now.
Perfect.
We got some questions. You got some questions, right?
Yeah, so I don't know if you saw this, but I
That's all.
called Annie Miller, or did I probably already told you about it. I feel like I tell you everything. Um, Annie, I saw her post about this because I think it's happening to like a lot of people. Um, and she's like, call your followers out. And so I did. I'm like, there's 111,000 of you here. If I come back to check this and there's only 5 questions, like, come on, type of thing. And I was like, don't be shy. And then I just got like bombarded. I'm like, this is what I like to see.
Nice
Cause
one.
like I would do them and I'd get literally 5 questions and like 3 of them were from my dad.
And then like,
So
and none of them were serious.
yeah, and I'm like, this isn't even something I can really answer. Like there are stuff I cannot answer on an
Yeah.
just the way I am. I need to like explain things, and if I can't, then I'll I'll just won't answer it. But we can come on here and answer them in, more long form ways. But yeah, there's like a question, for example, is like tips for balancing hormones. It's like, well, when you actually understand hormones, it's like, well, what is happening, right? Like,
Yeah.
yes, we can sleep more, we can focus on our diet and all that stuff, but like, I can't answer that question without understanding like actually what hormonal issues you're dealing with, So I feel bad when I can't answer stuff like that. Anyways, let's get into the questions. So the first question is, and I think me and you can kind of just chat back and forth. I do think
Yeah, that's
that we
cool.
take a very similar approach, but what percent is your suggested amount to cut calories when entering a deficit? So my answer to this on Instagram was it completely depends on the client. It could be anywhere from like 10 to 25%. There's different things that factor into this. And actually, I will typically bring the client in on this decision. So it depends on like the length of the diet, like if we want to go 12, 16-week type thing, or if we want to go shorter and more aggressive. I know we've talked about this before, but that's fine. So I will typically be around that like 15% mark because I want to get people into the deficit and not just like waste time.
Yeah.
But there are situations where like I think someone will actually respond at 10%, then I'll try it. Just based off of like their past and stuff. Like some people don't need a big drop to see change. Other people need more of an aggressive drop. So not a definitive answer, but it really just depends on the client, their current situation, where their calories are currently at. From a psychological standpoint, is dropping too aggressively going to affect them, negatively? Should we just, go with a more moderate deficit? So that's kind of my answer to that.
Yeah. I'm very much the same. I'll often do 20, but it's a big it depends question. And I know you
Yeah.
get this too, but we pretty much we never really start people off dieting, right? But
No.
there are times where we start dialing things in and they're already losing weight and they're like
Mm-hmm.
pretty close to maintenance. So when people are responding, like we're not also gonna cut 20% off of that.
Right.
I'll then sometimes go with like 5 to 9%, but that's only
Mm.
assuming they're already losing weight, right? Which sometimes we see in the
Yes.
beginning. And if they're picking up things quickly with tracking, with food choices, I'm like, hey, you know what? Like you're responding, like let's write this out and let's just make a little adjustment. Um,
Yep.
Generally though, like 20-ish, right? Because
Yep.
again, same thing as you said. You said it exactly how I would like. We want to get out of that maintenance range into the deficit, because we cannot be too careful. And I've seen people bring this up in the past on like Instagram stuff when they ask questions about, hey, macro adjustments, or what should I do? And hey, I think I'll start another cut, right? Next month, but then I want to do a slight adjustment, right? Thinking like, oh, I'm gonna like kind of start losing weight slowly but surely. But
Mm-hmm.
if you do like a, I don't know, like a 50% 50 calorie adjustment, your body will pretty much just adapt, and you're gonna not see
Yeah.
any difference,
Yeah.
and you're gonna get frustrated. So like, do that bigger cut, but then like stick to that as long as you can, right? Try
Mm-hmm.
to get away with as many calories as possible for as long as
Yes.
possible before you make the next adjustment, which again also will not be another 20%.
No. Yeah, we're really we're talking about that first adjustment is what we're
Yeah,
talking about here.
yeah,
After that, it's much smaller adjustments than like
yeah,
15-20%.
yeah.
Um
I think you could take that next one too, because you're the expert on this one.
yeah, I wanted to add this in here. So the question was new to gluten-free and struggle when eating out, any suggestions? So I completely understand the struggle here. It can be very hard being new to this, but I promise you it will get easier. It's just learning. It's a learning process, a learning curve. Um, so I will always look up the menu prior to going. If there's nothing gluten-free on the menu, then I will sometimes call them and ask, like, can you make these things gluten-free? And so that's pretty much the first thing that I do. When I'm at the restaurant, I make it very clear to them that I have a gluten allergy. So I have not been diagnosed with celiac, but it makes me very sick. So I just tell them I get really sick from it. And that it's not a preference, because they'll ask you, like a lot of restaurants will ask you, like, is this an allergy or a preference? And you need
Yeah,
to say allergy, like say it, even if it's not, just to be on the safe side. Um, Things like, so you'll see like uh crispy Brussels, for example, on a menu, and it'll say gluten free. This does depend on how sensitive you are to gluten. But they're unless they tell you or you ask if they're using a separate fryer, they're more than likely using the same fryer as they are with the other gluten containing foods. Um, so that's something to be careful of. So although it says gluten free, it might not be completely gluten free. There could be cross contamination happening there. Some people are fine with that, others not. Um, for me, it depends on the restaurant. Like sometimes I get sick and then sometimes I don't. Um, what else? Things like soups, sauces, um, like salad dressings are like have hidden gluten sources in it. And so keeping it simple is going to be less risky of you getting sick. Chicken dishes, fish dishes, things like that don't have a lot of sauce are usually the safest way to go. But again, asking them, like, can you check? I'll usually stick to like a balsamic vinaigrette, like typically that's a safe bet, or I'll just ask them to give me um like olive oil and lemon wedges or whatever, and I'll put it on myself. Again, it's just taking the safer route essentially. Um and then like for travel, so for me, like me and Eric know places around here that I for sure do not get sick from. And so we've found like 5 or so places, and we kind of just rotate those. And I find stuff that I like, and you can still have good variety there. So I do recommend doing that like in your area. But when you're traveling, that can be a little bit more tough. That being said, depending on where you're traveling, like some places have like completely gluten-free restaurants. It's awesome. Like I went to Texas and like there's so many options. It's amazing. But there's an app called Find Me Gluten-Free, and it will tell you a bunch of restaurants around. It's got reviews and it'll say if it's like dedicated gluten free. Like people are in there who have celiac and they're commenting and saying like if they got sick or not. So it's a good little app to have. But again, I think for me, like the biggest thing is speaking up and not being afraid to speak up and make modifications and not be embarrassed about doing that. Like at the end of the day, remembering that restaurants do want to impress you, like they want you to come back. So if you get sick, you're probably not going to come back. So they'll make the modifications that they need to in order for you to feel good and like their stuff. So, like, we kind of talked about like the alcohol thing, or what was that what we were talking about? Like, speaking up about that, it's the
Yeah.
same feeling. It's the same feeling, like where you don't want to say something, or like if you're with people and you're embarrassed about it. But at the end of the day, again, you're the one waking up in the morning feeling like trash or feeling good because you decided not to care what people thought, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so those are my top tips. There is another app called Spoonful. I recently found this app, and actually, it helped me figure out something I was eating that had gluten in it. And I was like, all waking up every time I ate this thing, I was like waking up feeling foggy, but I was only eating like a very small amount. But I was still waking up feeling crappy because I'm so sensitive to it. Anyways, you can scan products and it will tell you if there's gluten in it or if it'll pop up with like a yellow, I don't know what they have on there. It's like green, red, or yellow, and it'll say this may contain gluten. But it was like the cheesecake pudding that I was putting in the ice cream with the creamy that had barley in it, which is gluten. So it can help a lot if you're new and you don't know what foods have gluten in it, because there's a lot of different names for gluten, right? So Spoonful has been really helpful and can be really helpful. So those are my tips for that. But I promise you, you'll start to gain knowledge very quickly, and this will become easier for you.
I like that. I think those kind of apps are super helpful. I know there's like similar ones for like, vegans and, plant-based stuff, and or you're just vegetarian.
Yeah.
There's probably an app for like everything these days, so that's actually a good recommendation. Like look for an app. No, but
Yeah.
also for example with the sauces that you mentioned, I also didn't know that. Like what's like an example like of an ingredient there?
So they'll like sometimes in sauces, they'll like add flour to it to thicken it up. So they're
Yeah, of
adding
course.
like
Yeah.
wheat flour. Um, Sometimes like when products say natural flavors, like
Yeah.
that could be hundreds of ingredients and they're in those natural flavors, and one of those could contain gluten.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean there's different things. I actually wrote out I have a resource. I was actually going to post that to Instagram. I have a whole resource like listing out the different names for gluten and what to be careful of, and I feel like that would be something good to post.
Yeah, definitely. It'd be
Mm-hmm.
very helpful.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. I think that's great. Last thing to add here is it's just bring it up. Don't feel bad for being the person who is in your head, like in quotes, like making it difficult, because you're not. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. No.
if you
No.
literally like
Yeah.
if you actually cannot have it and you don't respond well,
Mm-hmm.
why not bring it up, right? There's
Yeah.
nothing to feel bad about. Um, Otherwise you will feel bad the next day, So
Yes.
it's
Yes.
just for your own good, and people will
Mm-hmm.
understand,
Yep.
both the people who you're with as well as the restaurant. Getting to the next question, it says, "Do you think it's accurate that most people struggle with hormone imbalance?" This is like a big, big, vague one, but I do understand where you're coming from. Um,
Yeah.
so most people struggling with hormonal imbalance. Okay, which hormones, right? Is it accurate? I mean, where to begin? I think hormones definitely are a big problem. Hormonal imbalance is a big problem. Yes, it's very common that a lot of people are struggling with autoimmune diseases and also with gut health, which is like, related to, unfortunately, mostly females, right? We really see that with our clients, way more recently too, with my clients too. Like we're getting more and more blood work done. We're diving more and more into the hormone side of things because people are not responding the way they're supposed to. People do have issues.
Yeah.
So I will say it is very common for people these days to have some issues there.
Mm-hmm.
I also don't like people assuming that they have hormonal issues without really getting into it, because it's almost like, oh, it must be the hormones, or you get the content online where it's like very misleading and it's like, oh, it's not this, it's this hormone, whatever it is. If you want to know for sure, right, don't worry about most people, etc. Get your own stuff checked, get blood work done.
Yeah.
You'll know.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big, yeah, I mean, it is more common, right? But
Yeah.
we want to
Yeah.
know, like,
Yeah.
what are we looking at? Testosterone,
Mm-hmm.
generally speaking, low in both men and women, right? Way lower than before.
Yeah.
Are we talking stress hormones? I mean, a lot of people very stressed these days, Are we talking sex hormones, etc.? The list goes on, right?
Yeah. I definitely think they're becoming more and more common. And I think it's because there's many factors I feel that are playing into this. Our modern lifestyle, like technology and all of that, like constantly being on our phones and what that's doing to us from like mental health standpoint, psychological standpoint, that's impacting us negatively, which is in return, like we're not sleeping as well. Like there's so many things that play into this like new lifestyle we're living with all this stuff, which I don't think a lot of people correlate with like hormonal stuff. I think too, like again, like the standard American diet, right? Our diet these days and the food we're eating. And I mean, that's why we do what we do to help try and, help these people improve their diet, which is directly going to impact their hormones. But like a lot is coming from our food. We are like a chronically stressed. We are like chronically stressed as a whole, I feel like. So obviously that's going to negatively affect hormones. um yeah, I just think it's like where our world is at right now. You know what I mean? Like is just affecting this, and why we're seeing more and more of it. um it's not just hormones, like it's hormones, it's gut, like Johan said, it's autoimmune, it's definitely more prevalent. Yes. So I do believe that's accurate
Yeah.
for a lot of those reasons I listed and other reasons, trauma and whatnot.
Yeah. I want to point out that it's not the hormones that are the root cause, right?
No.
It's an effect of what's
Mm.
been going on in your life, uh, which for a big part, for a lot of people, right, will come down to your habits, your lifestyle, your diet, your,
Mm-hmm.
lack of sleep, high stress levels, etc. So the
Yeah.
good news here is that as much as it is a big problem, you can do a lot to kind of like, let's call it fix it. But it's going to be a
Mm-hmm.
process, and especially
Yeah, and
these
that's the
these days,
thing. That's the thing is
good.
like with hormones, people they're asking like tips for hormone balancing. It's like this process of balancing hormones or improving our hormonal health isn't like a month thing. Like it takes a long time to improve these things. And so it's not just this quick fix type of thing.
Very strict,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of work.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I think that covers the question.
Yeah.
Next one. Let's see. What's the best way to figure out how much I should be eating?
So first, me and Johan, what we do is we actually like figure out what you're currently eating, right? And how much. So like when someone comes to us, we'll have them, and I assume you're still doing this, but
Yeah.
we'll have them do like a week or so of food logs to see where they're at. Then from there, we will take their activity level into play, how sedentary or not sedentary they are, all these different factors, and kind of see, like, based on their biomarkers, where someone's maintenance would be. But we kind of have to, like, it all depends on where you're currently at, right? Um, this is kind of a difficult situation or difficult answer. What would you add to what I just said?
So food diary, yes, like we're still doing that, and that happens with every single person. Like I'm
Yeah.
not even going to set your macros or do anything if you don't do your food diary. Like we need to know
Right,
where you're
right.
currently at. So I'll give you like the TLDR version. Do your food diary, track your body
Mhm.
weight every single day so that you know
Yeah.
exactly what's coming in. And if you need to learn tracking, that's cool. Give yourself a little bit of time to figure it out. But try to get it as accurate as possible. Track your body weight, see how it's moving. Do that for at least 2 weeks, preferably 3, 4. Like if you're doing this on your own, like give it time, You'll slowly start to kind of see how your body's responding. I then also want to calculate. I calculate the TDEE,
Yeah.
which we know is an estimation. You compare it to, hey, are you way above that, estimation, way below, just about there? The next steps will very much depend on what happens during those couple of weeks and where you're at, if
Right.
it's way over, under, or at that level.
Yeah.
That should help you figure this out. But the only way to figure it out is by actually doing it. And it's going to take multiple
Yeah.
weeks. And no calculation is better than the other, like they're all like pretty decent. But what I think can be a good one here is going into this thinking, hey, I'm not going to start with a diet. I'm going to start with a phase where I'm going to train well. I'm going to build some muscle. I'm going to fuel, nourish my body, and just feel good. And then you just
Yeah,
slowly try to increase.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, like, you need to pay attention to your biofeedback. Like, where's your hunger at? Where's your energy at? Like, if you're really hungry, then you need to probably increase calories. If you're overly stuffed, or you need to probably drop them down a little bit. You kind of want to be even keel across the board. Same with energy. Like, where's energy sitting? If you're constantly low energy or fatigued all the time, probably need to bump that up a little bit. How are you sleeping? If you're not sleeping well, I mean, yes, nutrition plays into that. Like, if we're under eating, we can see effects on sleep. And so biofeedback is really important to monitor during this process. I was going to say, like, how much I should be eating, but it depends on what your goals are. But
Also,
we're looking at it from a standpoint of, like, finding your baseline where you're currently at, because that baseline will change depending on where you go. If you want to go building muscle, or if you want to lose fat, like, whatever your goal is, I mean, that baseline will change. But, like, right now, we're trying to figure out where you should be eating. So we're looking at your biomarkers, and when those are in a really solid place, that's typically a good indication that you're at that maintenance range, and you can stay there for a bit until you want to go whichever.
I add one more thing to that. If you're really not sure, I always recommend doing this with a coach. Because here's the thing. Yes, to all the biofeedback stuff. But if the listener, right? If you're, and of course, I can't like assume where you're coming from, but let's say someone's been under eating for a long time. Your body
Yeah.
adapts. Your hunger hormones and everything else, like it's going to be out of whack. And you might actually already feel like you're stuffing yourself 500 calories below your maintenance.
Yeah.
And that's also an issue. So this is where you
Yes.
want to look at everything. So it's hard to give an answer really, but like let's imagine scenario where you're starting, you calculate your maintenance, you see your intake for the week, you see your weight's actually staying pretty stable. However, there's like a huge difference between that calculation and where you're currently at. Although weight might not even be moving. You're also not feeling super full, not super hungry, like you're kind of just, what you've been doing.
Yeah.
Also double check the formula. I think that's a good one too. But if it's a really big difference, I would highly recommend trying to slowly work your way up and allowing your body to get used to it. And I'm currently working through this with a couple people. Like, I had a guy come to me, his maintenance should be around like a 25, 26. He came to me eating just about 800 calories. Very low, right? So right away, I was like, hey, we got to bring this up. I know you want to lose fat, but we got to bring this up.
Yeah.
So we bumped him up. It was a process, right? But he went to 1,000, which I wanted him to like hit like way more, but that was already difficult for him, right? We kept trying. 1,000, 1,200, like 14, right? Guess what? He's already leaner now, but we're still working on that. So this is where sometimes coaching can help, because your like hunger signals might just not be in a good place, and it might actually give you the wrong idea. So I know this is making the answer even more complicated, but like, it's stuff that we need to mention,
Yeah, totally. This is why I struggle answering Instagram story questions, because like there's so much that goes in. Yeah, like there's so much. The more you know, it's like the harder questions are to answer, I feel like, honestly. Okay, let's do one more and then I think we're good. So best/natural ways to improve testosterone levels. He also asked about supplements. So again, this is going to come from the basics, the fundamentals. We are eating a nutrient-rich, balanced diet. So not completely removing certain food groups, right? Like, this is important. Adequate sleep, I would say, is number one. Stress management, managing that stress. If we're constantly in a stress state, that's going to drop those testosterone levels. Resistance training / regular exercise, we know. Another huge one is limiting alcohol. So alcohol is a big driver of low testosterone. It's not just because of the alcohol, it's also because of what it's doing to your sleep, what it's doing to your diet, and the stress it's putting on the body. So those are like the main things. I mean, again, there's so much we could talk about within those things, but we got to have that foundation in order to be optimizing those hormones. It goes for both women and men. This is not just for men. Some supplements that can help with testosterone. There's some good research on boron. I have had a few clients taking boron. I think Mike talked about this too. Like, if you want more in-depth education on this, we have a podcast with Mike Kesley, who specializes in this area. So that's a really good one to listen to. But he does talk about all of this stuff. So boron, magnesium, zinc, like vitamin D, those are all really important to help keep those testosterone levels in a good spot. But yeah, I mean, again, this to me, like, when it comes to hormones, it's the lower hanging fruits. Like, if we don't have sleep, if we don't have, if we're chronically stressed, if we are drinking all the time, no supplement is going to do anything. We've got to have these things in place first.
100%. And I think people will always still go for the supplements. And you know what?
Yeah.
I will say this, like, given that we are working on the basics, sometimes I'll still throw in like a supplement like early on, because it can give you a little extra, boost kind of thing.
Totally.
But still, like, focus on those basics and do not skip them. Like, don't be like, okay, sleep, like, I don't care about sleep. Or no, like, get your sleep in consistently and work on it. I know we don't feel like going to bed early, you know what I mean? I know we don't feel like that. I don't feel like it either, but I do know how I feel and how it affects my health. And
Yep.
It's like a responsibility, you know? Yes,
Mhm.
it's maybe more fun to stay up and watch Netflix, but I mean, it is your health we're talking about, you know?
Right.
And if we know that it's low, we got to do the work to bring that back up.
Exactly. Yep.
Nice one. It's good to do a good old Q&A again. So that being
I
said, if
know.
the listener has any follow-up questions or just new questions in general, you can actually submit them directly through Spotify, or you can just DM me, DM Christine, or, right, pay attention when we put up the Q&A box on our Instagram, actually just answer the fucking thing. because
Yeah.
because we're here to help, you know. We of course we keep these questions also anonymously. I think it's just important to just share stuff that you guys want to know.
Mhm.
So we want to be doing more of this also in the new year. Awesome. Christine, have a great rest of your week.
You too.
Listener, same thing. We'll chat soon. Alrighty.